Italy has the historical heritage and artistic most important in the world, but there is still no precise cataloging cultural heritage. Giorgio Salvatore.
Vittorio Sgarbi loves to repeat that the Colosseum is not our past, but our future, the future, still shrouded in fog. In fact, we do not know what the total number is, the exact geographic location, and even the precise constraints that way. On our cultural heritage, the task is not easy, but for a complete cataloguing of our immense historical and artistic heritage. The Central Institute for Catalogue and Documentation has been working for several years. What then are the reasons for this delay? The reason why we are behind
are that as the new fifth title of the Constitution does not clearly assign the competence between regions and state, and therefore this has created a supply chain to the lack of resources, as the problem of cultural heritage is posed, appears to be without solution.
This article is from 1976. Then the cause was sought in the difficulties of the relief. In reality it was a false problem, because if we see for a moment the images of the city policemen of Bari, who carry out the surveys in the areas affected by the 1980 earthquake, we realize that apart from the difficulties of approaching the terrain, there were no problems for the technique. It was enough to take metric photographs, and everything was solved. The same in this experience we had in Venice. In collaboration with the municipality, we made platform surveys. Floating, without any difficulty. In reality the only difficulty was due to the requests of the superintendency, which demanded the translation of the reliefs from the photographic to the graphic language. And it is clear that, making a relationship between the amount of information contained in a photograph and those translatable on the drawing, specialized people were required, who had clear ideas about what was to be represented.
A UNESCO estimate attributes to Italy 40% of the cultural accumulated in centuries of history on the planet, as if it has reached this very gratifying percentage assessment for our country. It is not given to know for certain it is, however, that in Italy there is no precise and reliable census of goods. Cultural does not exist in Italy. There is no region by region in Apulia. There is still a project is to create a regional documentation center on cultural heritage.
The documentation center was born from an agreement between the University of Bari and the Puglia region. A finalized project was then attached to the agreement, which aimed to involve, in the documentation, schools of all levels, starting from elementary school, and these images refer to an experiment carried out at the Balilla Elementary School in Bari for the teaching of photogrammetry in elementary schools. In reality the center, located near the monumental complex of a scholastic saint, was short-lived. Not so much for the difficulties encountered within the same institutions that had participated in the agreement, but just as it was conceived. Just to give an example of the causes, we cannot think that a person of Titanour goes to Bari to study the castle, on quite schematic graphic images, accompanied by some photographs. It was still far from thinking about the fact sheet of the cultural asset that started from the history of the asset itself.
The problem of cultural heritage. And when we talk about this, we say that it is actually indispensable for human growth. A man applies to the culture he possesses. It's growing in culture means growing in humanity. And this brings terrible consequences. For us then it means that the good of culture belongs to everyone, regardless of ownership, and is therefore a participant in our growing consciousness and development, which is why, in the introduction to the conference proceedings, I said that cultural goods protection, conservation, and promotion belongs to everyone. They are now for over 20 years that I work in this field, also at European level. And so I can say and I can document that actually the problem of cultural heritage enters as a problem of conscience in every citizen, in every man. Or it is an instrument of power in the hands of a few. It means involution of culture. Means incivility the good of culture. It is something strictly personal. We talk about non-economic goods. that the misunderstanding of Minister Ronchi does not arise, who sees the good of culture also as an economic promotion. But it is also an economic promotion. It is not a purpose. The good of culture is of culture, therefore of human growth, and therefore of the communities.
With the arrival of digital media, we have taken a step forward. And already in the Conference of '93, which includes the intervention of Monsignor Amato, there were the first works presented by the students on CD. Undoubtedly, this ease of being able to duplicate, but above all to update, in real time, the documentation, favored the formation of peripheral archives. The first experimentation concerns the archiving of the works done by the students. I think of the quantity of surveys carried out by students of engineering and architecture schools in Italy. We would already take a step forward if all were archived. As for the quality, which someone doubts, in my opinion, it is not a problem because, in essence, it is not printed stuff. Everything can be archived, modified, and put back into circulation.
From cartography directly to the computer to evaluate, read and compare years of history and projects and ideas. So every year the Chair of Architectural Photogrammetry of the Bari Polytechnic, together with the Chair of Thematic Cartography of the Faculty of Architecture, organizes a studio seminar at the end of the year, where students illustrate the project studied and analyzed during the academic year. This year it fell to the Bari railway station. Relived in 130 years of history reported in detail from paper to computer. So starting from 1865, to get to the present day, it is possible to see the changes that have affected the Bari station and evaluate the various architectural features that have contributed to improving a reference point of the capital city. Therefore, a new way of communicating represents the project idea. We are facing the so-called digital cartography. The analysis made by the students has had, in past years, other subjects such as the Castellana Caves, the Petruzzelli Theatre, the Cathedral of Barletta. The new fact is that projects can be followed all over the world thanks to the collaboration of the Internet.
The arrival of the Internet has truly brought about a revolution. Not so much for the opportunity offered to anyone to consult a catalog of cultural heritage from home or from anywhere in the world. But the novelty lies in the fact that each of us can put on the net a very small, albeit, documentation center. And this creates a competitive regime. No wonder, if the central catalog itself should turn back, compared to some university site, or some private association.
That of the realization of a geographical map is an ancient art, indeed very ancient, but, analyzing, it can be said that it is a question of representing spaces proportionally and rationally. From the maps of Ptolemy to the wonders of Google Earth, many centuries and many technologies have passed between Bari and Rome in a conference.
In the case of a bottle lamp, a field has been entered, in which it is possible to report the information to be reported. Just click on the map, and a dialog appears, in which we insert the name of the site we want to report. Then press the send button, and the information arrives at the central site. Anyone can add information. You can agree or disagree with what has been signed and can communicate it, because there is no problem of space, and therefore everyone can also discuss. Today we talk a lot about discussion on the web. In our case we could even add images, and make proposals, detect unshared interventions and so on. And it is very important that the documentation starts from the user. For example, you can never think that someone comes from outside and goes to discover what in dialect is called ukavut, that is, the door through which the peasants passed in the early morning. In ancient times, to go to the fields on the side opposite the door, the main gate of the village, you can interact with the master plan. If today we look at the plan of Serracapriola, we find that the castle is classified as a building of medieval origin of particular importance and so on. Or the school buildings, which have their own history, are classified as buildings whose demolition and reconstruction is possible up to 3 floors. If instead all this was integrated by the history of each building, which is possible with the information system, I don't think the designer would have given such a classification, nor can the designer of the master plan be blamed. Because, not being a resident of Serracapriola, he cannot know everything. Another fundamental fact is that with Google Earth we can even draw on the territory. So in schools, children can begin to represent the castle or even their home, and become aware of the environment in which they live. For a 14-year-old boy, using the drawing system, made available directly from Google, is not a problem. Not only that, but if we run some furniture and decor site, we have available, always via the network, the ability to draw inside homes. So we could think of a new furniture in our home, an enhancement of our home, located in the historic center. And this involves tourism. The possibility of transforming is not to be discarded. For example, the houses of the historic center, like the project, which is presented here at the conference, on the Deputies Hotel. But you have to show how this house is. Who comes to Serracapriola must know where he goes to live, what he finds and how he spends the day. And this is only possible through images. Allowing the use of films would be even better, considering that today the camera or mobile phone is available to everyone.